All right, we are back to our regularly scheduled Sunday morning Bible class as we are here to continue on in our look at the words of Jesus in the Gospels. This week we're on lesson 15, looking at Jesus saying, "I am the good shepherd" in John chapter 10. So let's pick up a little bit from where we left off last time. John chapter 10 is a continuation of Jesus's conflict with the Pharisees in Jerusalem. The conflict started all the way back in chapter 2 of John with him clearing out the temple, and it's just been increasing every time Jesus is back in Jerusalem for one of the major feasts. Chapter 9 had the man born blind and Jesus giving him sight. Now here we have Jesus continuing to talk about what it is that gives him the authority to be able to do what he is doing, to teach what he is teaching. That's the first 21 verses as we have the Good Shepherd passage. The second part in verses 22 to 42 are months later, but continue on with the same thing. So we could take John chapters 2, 3, 5, 7, 8, 9, and 10 and weave them all together into one separate book, just all by themselves. And Jesus continues to bring this up, bringing out the imagery. So we're going to look at the first 21 verses of John, but we're also going to look at that in the context of Numbers chapter 27. So if I can have somebody read that first paragraph with Numbers 27. All right, so here is God saying, "I will put a shepherd over the people, a man over the congregation to bring them out so that they will not be as sheep without a shepherd." We saw that with the feeding of the 5,000, that Jesus had compassion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. So what does it mean to be the shepherd? If I can have somebody read verses 1 through 6 of chapter 10. Okay, so we have Jesus saying that he not only is the shepherd, but he is the door to the sheep. He is the one that allows entrance and exit from there, from the sheep pen. If I can have somebody pick up with verses 7 through, well, just go through 21. All right, so again, with the door of the sheep, but also the good shepherd who lays down his life for the sheep. So let's get into the questions here. Question number 1. In this passage, Jesus uses a figure of speech to reveal additional aspects of his character as Messiah. John tells us the people who were listening did not understand the word picture. As you read through the story, describe what each image represents and list a few characteristics of each. So this is one of those things that I don't necessarily like to do in these allegories, is to, okay, we have to take apart everything and see, okay, what each individual piece means. Because sometimes that is helpful. Sometimes it's just, all right, we're just losing sight of the forest because of the trees. But let's look at this. All right, so letter A, what is the sheepfold or the sheep pen? All right, I'm just going to keep it in my hand because we're just going to keep rolling with this. All right, who is the gatekeeper and what purpose does he serve? All right, how about the shepherd? All right, Jesus says, "I am the door." What does it mean to be the door of the sheep pen? I'm going to combine the next two because they're fairly similar. Thieves and robbers and the hired hand. Who are the thieves and the robbers? Who's the hired hand? What's the differences between them? What are the similarities between them? All right, now we get to the sheep in the sheepfold. Who are they? And then letter H, as we get into verse 16, who are the other sheep? All right, so, my father, we get that one. That one's real easy. But I want to go back to the sheep and the other sheep for a moment. This is one of the most contested passages in the last 150 years in America, especially. Because up until 1830-ish, everybody agreed that the other sheep were the Gentiles, were those who were not Jews. They were the ones who were going to be brought into the sheepfold. 1830, this man named Joseph Smith comes along and says, no, it's not the Gentiles. It's the other Jews who left and came to America and became the ancestors to the Native Americans. And the whole story is laid out, and the history of that supposed people is laid out in the Book of Mormon. And that, Joseph Smith says, is the other sheep. The sheep that are from other lands that are being brought back in. Tying in all of the prophecies from especially Isaiah and Jeremiah about the remnant returning. Taking those in to being, this is the other sheep that Jesus is talking about. Not Gentiles. Other Jews who are lost. Or as we would more traditionally call them, the 10 lost tribes of Israel from the northern kingdom. So this is that idea between sheep and goat, or the sheep and the other sheep. But honestly, yes, it is Jew-Gentile. He's showing that, yes, right now, and in his ministry, 99% of all of his work went to Jewish people, teaching them the proper way of the Old Testament scriptures. The other 1% had the effect on those outside of the Jewish nation, whether it's the Syrophoenician woman in Tyre and Sidon, it's Jairus, or it's the Roman centurion whose servant is healed. All of these things, there's a handful of them, but not very many at all. All right, so getting into this allegory a little more, we have all of these things. So you have the sheep pen, that is the church. The gatekeeper, that's the pastor. Although pastor literally translates from the Latin and the Greek into shepherd. But truly the pastor is the gatekeeper, the one who guards the door. The shepherd is Jesus. He is the one who calls out to the sheep and they answer him and follow him. The gate, the door, is baptism. The thieves and the robbers are those who seek their own advantage in the situation, whatever that may be. The hired hand is the one who works as long as it's beneficial to him. But both the thieves and the robbers and the hired hand, they run at the first sign of trouble. Whether it's the thief and the robber, trying not to get caught, or the hired hand saying, these aren't my sheep, I'm not worried about them, I don't have to stay. All right, so that's the rest of breaking down the parable right there. We're going to move on to question 2 on page 111. Life in the pen under the gatekeeper may be safe and secure, but it was not the life the good shepherd meant for his sheep. He called the sheep out of the pen and led them out to good pasture. Likewise, Jesus came to give us life, an abundant life, or life to the full, as verse 10 can be translated. What does his promise of abundant life mean to you? Well, first of all, I want to go back to the point he makes. And life in the pen is not what Jesus wants for his people. He does not want us to just be walled up inside the church like it's some sort of compound that's trying to keep the world out. No, Jesus calls us out of our building. This was one of the big things during the shutdowns and COVID was now we get the chance to actually be the church. and not just be at church. But, I mean, there's some truth to it, is that we're called to be out there, being in the community among the people who need to hear the great message, the promise of abundant life. And what is that abundant life? It is life everlasting with Him. It is that promise of heaven that comes to us through the Word and sacraments, through His death and resurrection. The Good Shepherd laying down His life for the people. And that kind of boils into question 3 with verses 11 through 15. And what is it about Jesus' care and relationship with you that you learn from these verses? And that's why I just said it. The Good Shepherd lays down His life for the people. Verse 16. What does Jesus reveal about His flock? Now, yes, we've already covered the Jew-Gentile thing, but one of the other things that He reveals is that it's His flock. He decides who's in. He's the one calling each sheep out by name. He knows the sheep. He is the one who has brought each one of the sheep into the fold. He knows each one of us, which is one of the reasons why He lays down His life for His sheep. But why else would Jesus lays down His life for His sheep? Well, the stress there is, as He is looking to the Pharisees and the scribes and the elders of the people, He's looking at those who are supposed to be the gatekeepers, and yet they're more thieves and robbers and hired hands. They're there for their own benefit. They're there because those are the well-paying jobs. I mean, that's just the way it is. It's a political thing now instead of a matter of the heart and the soul of the people of Israel. But the Good Shepherd is not going to run when things get tough. In fact, the Good Shepherd is going to stand in front of you and take it for you, just as He did on the cross, laying down His life, taking your sin upon Himself so that you might be set free. All right, so we're going to look at verses 11 through 18 again, but comparing them to the passage from Ezekiel. So if I can have somebody read that paragraph from Ezekiel 34 at the bottom of page 112. All right, now let's go back to verses 11 through 18 of John chapter 1, or John chapter 10, back on page 110. All right, so we have here Jesus talking about being the Good Shepherd. And now in Ezekiel, it's God prophesying that He will be the shepherd. So this is the biggest thing that the people are trying to connect to, if they've got these passages in mind, is God talking to Ezekiel about being the shepherd of His people and the Good Shepherd laying down His life for the people. Again, that whole thing of God can't die. That's one of the biggest objections to the crucifixion and to Christianity altogether, is a God is not supposed to die. He's supposed to be all-powerful, all-knowing. Nobody's supposed to be able to sneak up on Him and kill them. Well, nobody snuck up on Jesus and killed Him. In fact, He forced their hands to do it. All right, so let's look at these verses that they pick out from Ezekiel 34. So verse 11 again. For thus says the Lord God, behold, I myself will search for my sheep and will seek them out. What is God saying here in regards to His role and Jesus' role as the Good Shepherd? Again, as I said before, we are His sheep. He is the one who has picked us. He has searched us out. We haven't gone searching for Him. Yes, some of us may have gone for a metaphysical search and journey to find ourselves and discover the truth of life in this world. But honestly, are we the ones who found him, or is he the one who guided us along that journey to see him? It's him leading that journey. All right, verse 13. I will bring them out from the peoples and gather them from the countries and will bring them into their own land, and I will feed them on the mountains of Israel, by the ravines, and in all the inhabited places of the country. What is this talking about with Jesus being the Good Shepherd? Again, it's going back to that calling out. As we discussed in the Wednesday morning Bible study at the beginning of the book of Acts, Jesus talks about the disciples being his witnesses in Jerusalem and in Judea and Samaria and to the ends of the earth. So when he calls us out from the sheepfold, he is calling us to the ends of the earth, but with the promise that he will gather us all back. It may be in this life, it may be, and definitely will be in the life of the world to come. But we may see glimpses of that in our life today. And then verse 14, I will feed them with good pasture, and on the mountain heights of Israel shall be their grazing land. They shall lie down in good grazing land, and on rich pasture they shall feed on the mountains of Israel. What is this saying about Jesus and what he is saying with the Good Shepherd? Ultimately, everything we need comes from him. There is nothing, as we say in Psalm 23, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Or as some of the more current versions say, I will lack nothing. Because he provides everything for me. That is what Jesus is saying the Good Shepherd does. The Good Shepherd provides not only the food, but the protection, that they can not only eat their full on the mountaintops of Israel, but they can lie down in safety. All right, last question before we close up. Name some of the things the Good Shepherd has done for you. And we could go on for a long list of these things. And each one of us could probably keep going on because there are so many different blessings that the Good Shepherd has given to us. But we're going to close it up here. Again, any questions, comments that you want, give it to the elder, give it to Renee, who's, not here. So, give it to the elder so they can get it back to me so that I can address that on the next video. But until then, I wish you God's richest blessings as we close with the Lord's Prayer.